All right, hello everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Great. So I'm Joanne Nottage. I'm a functional medicine health coach and an autoimmune patient like many of you. I am so excited and honored and grateful to be here today to share my story and a little bit about functional medicine and how it might help you on your journey. Like my friend Holly, I too used a functional medicine approach in collaboration with my Western medicine physicians to learn how to thrive despite multiple autoimmune diagnoses. And so I'm here today to share my story, to share my journey, and help you understand the functional medicine approach that Holly and I both used to turn our lives around. My hope is to inspire you to explore functional medicine and other complementary approaches that can work in collaboration with your Scleroderma medical experts to help you thrive too. Actually at this point I'll go ahead and let you know that all the information that I'm going to provide today is for information and educational purposes and is not intended to be specific medical advice for any of you. So please make sure that you consult with your experts and physicians if you have specific questions. Okay. So first, I want to go on to thank Stephanie for inviting me to participate in this conference because it's been really an incredible day and a wonderful experience and opportunity for all of us to learn from the leading Scleroderma medical experts on how advances in medicine can help those of you living with scleroderma improve the quality of your life. What I'd like to talk about today, and my purpose, is to share with you information that you can use and things that you can do to improve the quality of your life and to learn how to thrive, despite the diagnosis. And the information that I'm going to share with you today is information that you can use in addition to and in collaboration with your Scleroderma medical experts. So I advocate for a collaborative team approach using Western medicine, functional medicine, and other complementary healing approaches to autoimmune disease because this approach not only worked for me, it totally changed my life. It's the same approach that Holly talked about in the video that changed her life. So I'm going to share information with you with the hope that it will empower you to take charge of your life so that you too can make changes that might take you from just surviving with scleroderma to thriving with scleroderma or with a scleroderma diagnosis. So functional medicine, at this point, quick show of hands, how many of you have heard of functional medicine before? Okay, so some of you, that's great. Often when I give talks to groups, there may be one or two people that have heard of it, and that's why I decided to start creating awareness and talking about functional medicine. So functional medicine is a patient-centered, science-based approach to healthcare that looks at trying to identify and treat the underlying causes of illness and not just focusing on the symptoms. And for most of us with autoimmune disease, a lot of the treatment options that we have today are focused on treating our symptoms. So I feel better today than I have in years, but it took a long time to get here. And my hope is that sharing this information with you today will help you get some tidbits of information that you can use to improve the quality of your life today and next week and next month and have the support along the way. So there is so much information that I could be sharing with you today, so I'll only be able to scratch the surface. So I'm going to try to allocate time at the end for questions, and so hopefully that way, if there's something specific that I don't cover that's on your mind that you think might be relevant, you'll have time to ask. So, let me go back. So Before I get into my story and my journey, I'm going to circulate a clipboard with an email sign-up sheet so that if you're interested in my notes, with some of the details that I'm going to be talking about, if you're interested in a copy of my notes and you sign up with your name and email address, I can send you that next week when I get back home. And in addition to that, I'll send you what I call my insider's guide for specific lifestyle and nutritional tips and suggestions that were helpful to me along the way and have been helpful to others with autoimmune disease. So I'm going to circulate this now so that people have a chance to sign up. Thank you. And then if you don't sign up or forget to sign up and you're interested in the packets that you got, a copy of the slides, my email address and phone number are there, so feel free to reach out to me. Okay, let's talk about my story and my journey. I really began my journey to functional medicine in my early childhood. I went from being a very enthusiastic, active child with bright red rosy cheeks, and I still have those today, to being a child that was pale and got fatigued after walking to the grocery store for a few blocks. And after some time and some testing, I was diagnosed with anemia and then rheumatic fever. And so the rheumatic fever was my first autoimmune diagnosis, although back at the time when I was a kid, it hadn't been classified as autoimmune yet. So the rheumatic fever went on to damage my mitral valve, and we heard all about the heart and how it works and how important those valves are. So it damaged my mitral valve, and about 14 years ago I had open heart surgery, and I have a mechanical mitral valve, so I'm very excited about it. I consider myself bionic at this point. So gotta look at the positive side of things. So after that, I went on and developed more allergies and asthma and migraines and weight issues and fatigue, and just was getting sicker and sicker every day, every month, every year. And unfortunately, and I was always very health conscious, so I was always trying to do what I thought would be effective and what I thought was a healthy option. So I was trying all kinds of things, and yet I got sicker and sicker every day. Eventually, I developed some rashes and some hives, and I just couldn't explain them. Didn't have any clue or any idea what that was all about. In 1988, I'll never forget the day, I was at an A's baseball game with my sister, and it was a warm, spring evening, and a little breezy, and we're sitting there talking, enjoying a beer, having a great time. Not really into the baseball so much, but just a social opportunity with my sister. And all of a sudden, she looked at me while we were talking, and she pointed to my head and said, "Oh my God, what is that bald spot on your head?" And I looked at her, I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "What is that bald spot on your head?" Well, I was horrified. I had no idea I had a bald spot on my head. So I quickly got up, ran to the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and sure enough, there was a nickel-sized bald spot on my head. And I had no clue. I hadn't seen it. I hadn't noticed it. And so I became very, very afraid, and I started to worry. Like, I'm sure many of you can relate when you had started to develop symptoms and didn't know what was going on. So I thought, oh my God, do I have a brain tumor? Do I have cancer? Am I going to die? What is going on with me? So long story short, I was diagnosed with my next autoimmune disease, and that was alopecia. So alopecia is when your immune system attacks the hair follicles, and as if they're foreign invaders in your body. And so I had a long journey of roller coaster ride, I should say, with alopecia over the years. Fortunately, when I was diagnosed, my primary care physician referred me to the leading expert on alopecia in the U.S., Dr. Vera Price at UCSF. So I had the best possible care for my alopecia. Yet, unfortunately, the best possible care for alopecia at the time, and for most people today, is something that you're all familiar with and we've talked about quite a bit today, and that's immunosuppressant drugs. And they have a very important place to play and an important role in our care, but that was really the only option that I had. And so I went through all of those options and participated in clinical trials and had cortisone injections in my scalp, had cortisone injections in my eyebrows because I went on to lose my eyebrows and my eyelashes and most of the hair on my head at that time. And sometimes things worked and it grew back and then it would fall out again. And finally, after a while, I decided it was best to just let it be because none of the treatments were doing anything to stop the inflammation and the immune response that was attacking my hair follicles. It was all just treating the symptoms and stopping the reaction at the hair follicle, and actually trying to trick my hair follicles into reactivating. So after that, I went on to try to do everything else I could do to impact my health because I kind of put that on the side. And so during those years, I tried everything that I could do. I saw at least 10 different doctors. I saw all the specialists. I saw endocrinologists and dermatologists and OBGYN docs, and always saw the cardiologist, still do because of my mechanical mitral valve. And one day, I was sitting in my primary care physician's office, and after presenting with hives, and I had no idea why. I didn't even know what hives were until then. And I said to her, you know, is it possible that all of these different and various symptoms that I keep developing are somehow all related to some internal cause, and that if we could figure out what that was, and then maybe address that these symptoms would go away and that my health would improve. And I love my primary care physician, and she looked at me a little bit perplexed, and she said, well, you're seeing all the specialists that I referred you to, right? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And she said, well, then you're doing the best that you can do, so you know, don't worry about it at this point. There aren't very many other options for you. So I left the office that day really more frustrated, more perplexed than ever before. Yet, I became more convinced that there had to be another way, that there had to be some way to try to understand what was causing this immune response, this immune attack throughout my body. So that is what led me to start to explore alternative approaches to my health care, and eventually led me to functional medicine. And so I will share some information with you now about what functional medicine is and how it might be helpful to you. And the approach that I'm going to discuss is the same approach that Holly mentioned in her video, and the same approach that I used to treat my autoimmune issues. So what is functional medicine? Some of you have heard of it before, but I want to make sure and get a definition out here for all of you. And it's really a new whole patient-focused operating system and clinical model for the assessment, treatment, and prevention of chronic illness, including autoimmune disease. And it incorporates the latest in genetic science, systems biology, and the understanding of how toxins and lifestyle factors contribute to disease. We actually heard quite a bit throughout the day from the medical experts about how important it is to have a positive attitude, how important it is to be hopeful, how important it is to exercise, how diet can influence your health. So these are all the kinds of things that functional medicine approach considers. Okay, so the important aspect to share with you today is the functional medicine perspective on autoimmune disease. All of you here know that autoimmune disease is a disease of the immune system, and In functional medicine, we believe that a runaway immune response, also known as systemic inflammation, is really the most important part of looking at an autoimmune issue. So whether you have scleroderma, Hashimoto's, alopecia, MS, lupus, any one of the more than 100 diseases that are classified as autoimmune, from a functional medicine perspective, the approach to evaluating and treating that disease is the same. So the same approach that Holly used to treat her scleroderma symptoms is the same approach that I used to treat my Hashimoto's and my other multiple issues that I will discuss. So we really look at trying to understand, well, what triggered that initial immune response in your body? What was your immune system fighting that it then got confused or went into hyper alert and started attacking your tissues, your healthy organs, your healthy parts of your body? So what triggered that? Something triggered that. Now, we do know that about 30% of our risk to develop autoimmune disease comes from genetic predisposition. But that means there's 70% of our risk that we have some control over. We don't control all of it, but we have some control over. So functional medicine looks at trying to identify those triggers and those underlying causes, and then eliminating them and addressing any imbalances that have been caused by the inflammation and by the immune attack. Okay. So possible causes other than the genetic predisposition for autoimmune disease include stress. We've heard that mentioned a couple of times today. And our modern lifestyle can be very, very stressful. And stress does influence and increase the inflammation in our bodies. Our genetic predisposition I already mentioned. Toxins in our environment, in the air, in the water that we drink, on perhaps pesticide-laden fruits and vegetables that we buy and we eat. And then some of the medications that we take. The way that the medications, whether they're prescription medications, over-the-counter medications, can impact us and lead to the development and contribute to the development of autoimmune disease is because of the impact on our gut. We heard earlier today a little bit about bacterial overgrowth and how important having a good, healthy gut is in terms of absorbing, digesting, absorbing, and assimilating nutrients from our food. And so some of the medications, especially when they're taken over a long period of time, can damage the lining of our gut or can create an imbalance in our microbiome. Infections. Many of us might be walking around with hidden infections in our body that we don't really know about and that aren't causing any immediate symptoms that are telltale signs of that particular infection. But those kinds of things that we may have acquired 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, may have contributed to creating inflammation in our body. And so one of the things I want to point out on this slide is that, I mentioned the genetic predisposition being about 30% of your risk. So if any of you in this room have children or siblings or family members that don't have scleroderma or that don't have an autoimmune disease now, and you're worried and concerned that they have a genetic predisposition to developing the disease, I'm here to share with you that I believe that if you can manage and control some of these other factors, that it's possible that person never develops an autoimmune disease. So just having a genetic predisposition is not enough in itself, or a guarantee that you will develop autoimmune disease. So it's a little bit kind of like a perfect storm, right? So if you have the genetic predisposition and you take a lot of different medications for a variety of reasons, and you lead a very stressful type A lifestyle, like I did for many years, and I keep working on it, and maybe a hidden infection, well, all of those things could combine to eventually trigger an autoimmune disease. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about going forward is what are the things that we can do to minimize those other factors, because they are not only important in the development and triggering of autoimmune disease, but they are the same factors that we address to treat autoimmune disease. So the way these all contribute to the development of autoimmune disease from a functional medicine perspective is that they impact our gut, as I mentioned, either creating intestinal permeability, which some of you may have heard is often referred to as leaky gut, or gut dysbiosis, which is an imbalance in our microbiome. So what happens if we have leaky gut? A lot of the food that should be digested in our gut, and then the good nutrients are absorbed, is not, and the good stuff goes on and then the bad stuff goes away. Well, if we have a leaky gut, then partially undigested foods and toxins from our gut can actually get into our bloodstream. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that's how that process works. And so that can lead to the malabsorption of nutrients, which can then cause illness, and all kinds of illness, not just autoimmune disease, but it can also trigger autoimmune in those of us with that fabulous genetic predisposition. So now I'm going to get back to my story and share with you the approach that Holly and I both used to turn our lives around. And as I'm sharing this with you and talking with you, I want you to remember that this approach can work in collaboration with your current Scleroderma experts and your current approach. So I am not advocating that we should approach autoimmune with a functional medicine perspective exclusively. Again, what I advocate for is a collaborative team approach so that we get the best of both worlds. Okay, so my first functional medicine appointment was different than any other medical appointment I had ever had. I went in, and first of all, she told me to allocate an hour and a half for the appointment, which I thought was quite interesting. I thought, wow, it's been a long time since I've had that kind of appointment. Maybe my surgery was that long. So during that appointment, she asked about, my medical history and my symptoms, but the discussion went way beyond that. She wanted to know about my mom's pregnancy, what my mom's health was like when she was pregnant with me, and then about everything else that might have impacted me or my environment from the time I was born until that day in her office. So it was a very lengthy conversation. And then that information was plotted onto a functional medicine patient timeline and clinical matrix. And those are two really important tools within functional medicine that are used to look at the patient as a whole and to look at all the different factors that went into creating the circumstances that led your body to develop an immune reaction or other illness. And so based on my story and my symptoms, she looked at, the one thing I didn't mention, I'll throw it in here. So over the years, before I went to my functional medicine nutritionist appointment, was my first experience with functional medicine. All my blood work looked good. You know, your basic blood work that you do when you go to your primary care physician, everything for years looked good, yet I was feeling sicker and sicker every day and every year. Towards the end of that period of time, just before I was convinced to explore other options, I started to have low levels of protein in my blood, low levels of calcium, and a few other results that were out of whack. And so when I asked my primary care physician, hey, what could be causing these? This is, you know, I'm surprised this is new. What could be causing this? And, you know, she said, well, clearly you need to increase your protein in your diet and increase the amount of calcium-containing foods that you're having. Well, that really didn't make sense to me at the time, because trying to get healthy and trying to lose the weight that I kept gaining every year, I had gotten to a place where I was eating primarily a high-protein, low-carb diet with lots of calcium-containing vegetables and low-fat at the time. So when she said increase your protein and calcium, it just didn't make sense to me. I thought, I can't possibly eat any more protein than I'm eating, and that would just be insane. So when I went to the functional medicine nutritionist, and she looked at my test results, and heard all, you know, my background and my history, and she asked me what were some of my favorite foods, and when I craved things, what did I crave? She suspected that the low calcium and protein were as a result of a leaky gut that was probably damaged due to gluten and maybe dairy. So she asked me to consider doing a gluten and dairy-free elimination diet and some additional gut health testing. So at the time, I was so desperate to feel better, I decided to and agreed to do a gluten and dairy elimination diet, 3 weeks. And despite the fact that at the time, I didn't believe there was any validity to gluten causing any of my symptoms. I just thought it was another fad, but I felt like, well, what do I got to lose at this point? You know, nothing else is working. I'll try it for 3 weeks, come back, nothing will have changed, and then we'll get on to something that's going to make a difference in my life. So the amazing thing is that I went off of the gluten and dairy for 3 weeks. I think within 2 weeks, all of the allergy-type symptoms that I had, the runny eyes, runny nose, asthma and congestion that I had, cleared up within 2 weeks. And just to kind of paint the picture a little bit for you, I had been on antihistamines, nose sprays, inhalers, you know, all kinds of anti-allergy meds for over 20 years, probably 25 years. And so when everything cleared up, I was really surprised. I went off of all of those meds, and then I also went to the allergist to get some additional testing. And I haven't been back on those meds since then, and that was about 3.5 years ago. So my journey, my healing journey began about 3.5 years ago. So when I went back to my nutritionist and she said, so how'd it go? And I shared with her my results. She said, are you convinced now that, you know, gluten and dairy should be stricken from your diet? I wasn't absolutely convinced. I'm a chemical engineer from Northwestern by background, which I didn't mention. So I'm a science-based person. I thought, you know, if there are some tests that we can do, let's do the test. I want to, before I give up gluten and dairy, let's test this. So in order to do the testing, you have to be eating gluten and dairy so that you don't get a false negative. So I went back on gluten and dairy, and within 24 hours, I felt like I had been run over by a truck. I mean, I felt like I had been run over by a truck, perhaps had a bottle of tequila the night before on my own. I felt like hell. So, but I thought, okay, let's do the test. So we did the test, and you know, unfortunately for me, we confirmed and validated the fact that I was intolerant to gluten and to every dairy protein we tested for. So given that, you know, bread and cheese were two of my favorite things in the world, that was not a fun conversation. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the other things that we did, but so the approach is to look at each person and their specific symptoms and circumstances and develop a personalized testing, evaluation, and treatment plan. And so for me, as I said, we eliminated the gluten and dairy, did some gut health testing. We also looked at thyroid and adrenals, and then did a heavy metals accumulation test. And that was often heavy metals accumulation from a functional medicine perspective can contribute to the development of autoimmune disease. And on that previous slide, it goes under the toxins. And being a chemical engineer, working in a lot of manufacturing and research facilities over the years is part of what triggered that thought to test for that. So we did all the testing in addition to the elimination diet, and as it turned out, in addition to eliminating the gluten and dairy, we found out that there was quite a bit of work to do to heal my gut. I had yeast, excessive yeast in my gut. We heard this morning a little bit about small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. I had some of that. I had H. pylori and some other things to address in my gut health. And then we found out that I had adrenal dysfunction and Hashimoto's, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I did have, thank God we did the test for the heavy metals, because the levels that I had of mercury and lead, and this is not acute toxicity, it's not a blood test, it's a urine test. And so the levels that I had accumulated in my body were some of the highest levels this particular practitioner had seen. And so she said, I'm so glad you came in, because just this test may have saved your life. And so the thyroid autoimmune disease that I was diagnosed with, Hashimoto's, was a little bit frustrating for me, because I had been presenting with a lot of the classic symptoms of Hashimoto's for years. My inability to lose weight no matter what I did, the dry skin, what hair I had, the dry hair, and a lot of the other classic symptoms. And so when I'd gone to my doctor and to the endocrinologist, they tested my TSH, which is the thyroid stimulating hormone. And that was within the quote-unquote normal range for a lot of the standard labs that do testing, but it was at the high normal. Now, the range that most and many of the endocrinologists really like to see your TSH in is much narrower than it was at the time. But despite all of that, no one thought, and the fact that I had other autoimmune issues, no one thought to test me for thyroid antibodies until my functional medicine nutritionist said, hey, let's do this test. So I got the diagnosis of Hashimoto's. And the reason that I share that is because one of the things that I talk a lot about is having a collaborative approach to your healthcare by having, practitioners from our conventional Western medicine, having and adding a functional medicine practitioner, and perhaps other, holistic or complementary modalities. So it's really important that you work with practitioners and physicians that are open to collaboration, and that you can be and feel empowered to take charge of your health, to request tests that you think might be relevant, to request the support that you think you need to help your body heal. And so when I went actually to my primary care physician and said, I want these tests done, she agreed. And she said, yes, let's do that. And then, of course, it came back that I had Hashimoto's. So unfortunately, at the time, again, the only options for me with that new autoimmune disease were to take the thyroid medication, which I'm still on today and probably will be on for the rest of my life because of the damage done to my thyroid. But there weren't, very many other options to deal with, well, what's attacking my thyroid? Okay, so the treatment plan from a functional medicine perspective may include medication for the issues that you have, supplements, diets, detox programs, and lifestyle changes. And for me, we've talked a little bit about what I did. I eliminated gluten and dairy, plus after subsequent testing and elimination diets, I removed a few other food items that I'm sensitive to. And then adding some more healthy and therapeutic foods, things like good omega fats. Not all fats are created equal, so if you're going to have fat, it needs to be good fats like avocado, olive oil, and such. And then we worked on cleaning up my gut. I took L-glutamine, digestive enzymes, probiotics that we heard about earlier today, and other supplements to replenish the nutrients that I needed and to repair and treat some of the infections that I had. And I did a heavy metals detox plan, which also included infrared sauna as a way to help the detox process, and then added some foods that are really naturally good detoxing elements like leafy greens. They're really great to support detox. And the thyroid medication I mentioned. And of course, I mentioned earlier how stress can contribute to development of autoimmune disease. I was told that I needed to find a way to improve my stress management, reduce the stress in my life, and learn how to relax so that I could sleep better. And so I went on to do those things, and well, I guess I'll go to the next slide. Oops. Okay, so what happened when I implemented all of this? Things changed dramatically for me as we systematically, addressed each of my symptoms and each of the issues that we discovered from the testing. My symptoms quickly improved. I already talked about the allergy meds. I started to lose weight. I still have a ways to go, but I started to lose weight. My energy improved significantly. My sleep definitely improved. And what I love is that my autoimmune antibodies actually came down. So clearly what we were doing was making an impact. And I also lowered my toxic burden by getting rid of the heavy metals and then making conscientious efforts in areas of my life to buy organic produce, to buy high quality protein, grass-fed, no antibiotics, and those kinds of things. So today, I'm not just surviving with autoimmune disease, I'm thriving. I'm living a very active, vibrant, fulfilling life, and it's why I'm here today, because I want that for all of you too. As I mentioned, the stress management was really, really a challenge for me, still is. So what I did to try to address that is learn to meditate. And that was really hard for me, but I found a great little app called headspace.com, which helped me get started, and I still use it today. I also started doing yoga, taking walks on the beach, which I always loved to do, but I kept using an excuse that I don't have time. So now I've learned how to make time and prioritize time to take care of myself, and because I need the stress relief. So now I'm continuing to learn and explore new options that will help me, that I believe going forward will prevent me from developing additional autoimmune diseases, because as many of you know, Once you have one autoimmune disease, it's likely that you will develop a second and maybe a third, and I have multiple ones. So I'm going to jump ahead here and just say that using my experience with autoimmune disease and what I learned along the way to help other people has become my new passion in life. I spent so many years feeling so horrible and so frustrated that I decided that I needed to transition my career so that I could help other people by getting this information out there, by supporting people on their journey. And again, as I said, I advocate for a collaborative approach, and we'll always need Western medicine for our acute care needs, for surgery, for medication. And I've had both the surgeries and the medication. So, but what I did about 1.5 years ago, I went to the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy to learn how to learn more about functional medicine and how it works, and to deepen my understanding of all the lifestyle factors that can really make a difference in people's lives. And that, combined with my own personal experience, has really been an amazing opportunity for me to help other people get help quicker and more effectively. So now I work with people one-on-one to support them, to help them understand what the options are out there and how to navigate all of the options and what might be right for them. And then also in groups to provide group coaching and support groups. And I think this is an amazing conference and an amazing opportunity. I'm really happy for each of you that you're here, because there are studies indicating that lack of social relationships and support systems can be a more significant risk factor in developing chronic illness and autoimmune disease than smoking. And we've already heard how horrible smoking is for your heart, and it's bad for you all the way around. But there are studies showing that just not having support can be a more significant risk. So it's great that you're all here. So, okay, so I'm going to try to go quickly through the rest of this. Functional medicine practitioners are, most of them have come to functional medicine much like I did. They were searching for answers for themselves, their family members, or their patients. And were having the same kind of frustration that I experienced. And so they came to functional medicine as another way to help their patients. So they are taught by the Institute of Functional Medicine, and there's some other places that train doctors, to integrate what they've already learned and what they already know from their clinical practice with functional medicine. So functional medicine is like an approach that's added on top of what they're already doing. And it's an inclusive model. So there are over 100,000 functional medicine practitioners, and they come from all different backgrounds. All medical providers, but some are Western medicine, some are Chinese, some are acupuncturists. And in the last, I guess about 2 years ago, the Institute of Functional Medicine collaborated to create the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy, where I chose to go to learn more about this as a way to provide functional medicine health coaches who are trained in the same aspects of functional medicine, but also have the positive psychology and the art of coaching. Because as we've discussed, a lot of the things that I did to improve my health, that Holly did to improve her scleroderma symptoms, are lifestyle changes, behavioral changes, so that the functional medicine model recognized how critical it is to have support to implement those changes. Because we all know we shouldn't eat, greasy food that's high in fat and high in carbs and lots of candy and sugar all the time. But it's not that easy to walk past it. So we need help and support to make those changes. And so that's where the functional medicine health coaches come in. And that's my role in this whole situation, is to help support people along their way. So I'm going to do a quickie little information here for you on the Cleveland Clinic. Being we're in the Midwest, many of you might have heard of the Cleveland Clinic. It's a very prestigious U.S. medical center. And in 2014, they opened the first functional medicine clinic within a U.S. medical center. And they did this in collaboration with the Institute of Functional Medicine to create an opportunity to evaluate functional medicine from a cost perspective and, more importantly, from a patient outcome perspective. And it's been such an incredible success that they just finished an expansion, and they have a very long waiting list. So the CEO of the Cleveland Clinic, Toby Cosgrove, says that the time has come for a new approach to the crisis in chronic disease. Functional medicine is destined to make a powerful contribution to American healthcare in the years to come. So now I'm going to share with you a little bit more information, and I won't spend a lot of time on this because I know we're running late, on some of the why some of these things that I did and Holly did were effective. And so in functional medicine, we believe that the health of our gut, good or bad, is very important to our overall health. Hippocrates said many thousands of years ago that all disease begins in the gut. So this isn't a new concept, really. We're just going back to the basics. So we talked a little bit about the importance of gut health already, so we'll just go quickly here. It's really important because 70% of our immune system, roughly 70%, is in our gut. So it's important that our gut is healthy because that's where our immune system lies. And then we've talked about the rest of this, so I'm going to move on. I'm going to talk about gluten a little bit. I mentioned it earlier. So at this point, I want to say to you that, many of you might feel like I did when I was first asked to give up gluten. That gluten-free diets are just the latest fad. And unfortunately, for some of us and for many people, eating gluten can be dangerous. So gluten, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, is a protein found in wheat, barley, and rye. And for those who have a difficult time digesting it, it can really impact the lining of your gut. There is growing evidence and more published medical literature indicating that gluten is such a significant contributing factor to leaky gut intestinal permeability that one of Dr. Alessio Fasano is a well-known celiac researcher, and he says that you can't have autoimmune disease without intestinal permeability. So the fact that gluten does cause intestinal permeability in many of us is an important thing to consider when thinking about options. So one of the things that I want to mention here is that there are some very common symptoms associated with gluten sensitivity, and those are the obvious ones, bloated, constipation, diarrhea, just stuff that you associate with your gut. But the reality is there are a lot of symptoms that are caused by gluten sensitivity that have nothing to do with the gut. Because when she mentioned that I should be gluten-free, I thought, boy, I don't have any of those symptoms. I don't have any gut issues. But things like joint pain, arthritis, skin issues, depression can all be symptoms, brain fog, symptoms of gluten sensitivity. So it's not as easy. You're having such a great time with what I'm talking about. Okay. this point, for any of you out there who are, interested in considering, next steps and maybe incorporating some of what I've talked about, I want to share some things with you, some suggestions that I wish someone had shared with me way back when. And the first one is to listen to your body, to trust your intuition, to trust your symptoms, because this is your journey. What I've talked about that were the causes of my autoimmune issues may not be the same causes for your issues. But the approach, this functional medicine approach, is effective and is the same, regardless of what the details are that are uncovered. So I want you to trust your intuition. Consider a gluten elimination diet, and if you're going to do it, you need to do it for at least 3 weeks, maybe 4, to give your body a chance to recover from the inflammation. Take advantage of testing, whether it's Western medicine testing or some of the new state-of-the-art functional medicine testing. Learn how to reduce and manage your stress. Continue to be involved in support groups and create a community of support for you in the way that works for you. Minimize your environmental toxins, buy organic produce when you can. And if you can't buy all of it organic, the Environmental Working Group has a website that shows the dirty dozen and then the, I think, clean 15, so that you can prioritize what you buy that's organic. Strawberries, for example, always buy organic. They collect all the pesticides. A collaborative team approach, consider adding a functional medicine practitioner, whether a functional medicine doctor or a functional medicine health coach like me, to your team to help you understand the options and navigate the lifestyle changes that can make a huge difference. And improve your gut. And we heard it today a couple of times, exercise is really important, and this is another place where it's important that you listen to your body, because we're all at different stages of our illness and our capabilities. So, start, if you're not exercising now, start with something gentle, maybe some Tai Chi or some easy walking. Okay, I mentioned you can work with a health coach or a functional medicine practitioner. I'm trained in functional medicine and nutrition, positive psychology, mind, body, spirit approaches, and the art of coaching. And really my role in the package is to help support your efforts and help you understand the options available, provide information and education, help you overcome the challenges along the way, provide compassion and empathy, and to collaborate with your providers as necessary so that we're all on the same page, and more importantly, to celebrate your progress and success. Now, if you aren't working with a functional medicine provider already, you can start with a functional medicine health coach like me, and then as we collect your information and your story, I can refer you to a functional medicine provider in your area to help you with any additional work that you need to do. Some additional helpful resources, and this is in the handout that you have, since I don't have time to talk about everything. And so at this point, I really hope that this discussion about how Holly and I used functional medicine and to thrive despite our autoimmune diagnosis has been helpful to you and inspiring and empowering, because it's your journey and you have the power and the ability to make changes that can impact your health and improve the quality of your life. Whoops, sorry. Okay, so as I wrap up here, I want to share with you that I am grateful for so many things in my life. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here today. I am grateful for my family, my friends, my amazing, awesome 21-year-old cat who's still fighting the battle. Yeah, my husband's sending me photos of her every day. Look, she's still doing fine. Yeah. I am very grateful for the functional medicine and other complementary healthcare providers that help me identify the underlying causes for my symptoms and Then my primary care and other specialists that were collaborative and helped me create this great team approach to my care that helped me thrive. I am also grateful, this is probably hard to believe, but I am also grateful to be living with autoimmune disease, because all of my life I wanted to do something to help people. Yet I was a chemical engineer with an MBA in marketing working in corporate America, and that's been wonderful and that's been great. But I always wanted to do something to help people, but I didn't know what it was. I thought about going back to medical school, but I thought I'm too old for that. So this autoimmune journey has really taught me how to love and nurture myself, and given me an opportunity to find my purpose in life, and that's to share my story to help you and others like us thrive despite our autoimmune diagnosis. Yes, sir.
When's the book coming out?
Thank you. Thank you. The one other thing I want to say here, I'm sorry, do you have questions?
I do.
Okay.
Is there a difference between functional medicine and integrative medicine?
Yes. So functional medicine is an integrative approach and looks at the whole body as an interconnected group of processes. But functional medicine has a systematic approach to addressing the issues. An integrative approach doesn't necessarily have all the processes and symptoms in terms of how to work with the patient. So different integrative doctors might handle it all in different ways. There's not that consistency. But a functional medicine doctor is typically going to have the same process and use the patient's timeline and clinical matrix. So I do want to see if you have any questions, but I want to remind you that there is a clipboard, hopefully circulating somewhere. So if you're interested in more information and you haven't signed up on the clipboard, please go ahead and do so, or come up to me after. We'll take some questions now before Stephanie kicks me out. But I will be here after for any additional questions, so come up to me. Oh, one question?
Sorry. One more.
Yeah.
Oh, so you mentioned the Environmental Society and foods?
Environmental Working Group.
Okay.
I think it might be ewg.org.
Okay. And it kind of lists the organic foods.
It prioritizes the 12 that you should never buy, not organic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think I'm way over time, so I'd love to talk to you, and I'll be here. So why don't you come and chat with me individually, and I'll address your questions. So thank you so much for listening, and I'm sorry I went over.